Agriculture, National Agriculture Advisory Services. We also are aware that other programs which are for social service delivery, including universal primary education, universal secondary education, and many more others. Now focusing on this policy and where we are as a country, we would like to go into the internalization of the state of local governance in Uganda, whether we are making a way head-on to achieve these stated goals, this stated mission, and this stated vision, which remains poverty reduction, wealth creation, and prosperity. Our dear guests, you're welcome, and fellow countrymen and women are very much expectant to hear from you and maybe give them hope that this animal called poverty will one time come to an end in Uganda. Thank you.
Well, looks like you want me to start.
Yes, you are the one.
I want to say thank you again for the opportunity. And I'm grateful that I'm sitting next to the Honorable Andre, a leader.
Your great friend.
Yes, my great friend, but not only that, a leader I respect very much. And when you were minister, you did a good job.
Thank you.
And so it's quite pleasing for me to be sitting next to you.
Thank you,
and
brother.
to learn from your wealth of experiences. You know, the topic you are bringing today is quite broad. And for me to talk about the issues you have raised, I would like to take you back a bit. One is that we very well know the purpose for which decentralization system came to play or came into being. And the most important part of that is the fact that there was need to take services nearer to the people, but also to allow the citizens get involved. And I would put it in three perspectives: the aspect of involvement, the aspect of participation, but also the aspect of ownership. Getting involved in the decision-making processes, but also in taking charge of what they need. And so the intention was a good one. And indeed, it has contributed, it has made significant contributions towards the development of the country. But there are a few things we need to look at. Number one, do we still have that original intention? The answer may be yes. But you see, it's not just a matter of saying yes. There are things that are currently going on that water down the purpose for which decentralization was put in place. Number one, when you give powers to the people to take charge of their affairs in the name of taking services closer to them, in the name of allowing them get involved in the decision-making processes, these powers that were given included the power to plan, budget, generate local revenue, but also implement. Fortunately, I worked with the local government of Gulu for 15 years.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to say that.
Yes, I joined as a councillor.
Yes, sir.
In 2006, and later on became a district council speaker.
Yes, sir.
And after 5 years, I became district chairperson and served for 2 terms. When you look at the local governments of today, they are quite different from the local governments of 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and so on. The powers are being taken away daily. Local governments are becoming weaker and weaker. And so if you are asking whether local governments have the capacity to drive the development agenda and cause a change, if you're talking about local governments are playing a role in dealing away with poverty, then we need to pay a lot more attention to how those local governments operate, but also whether they have the capacity to do the things that are needed. There are indicators that are not very good, and I'll share with you very briefly. Number one, just as you talked about the number of local government entities that we have today, the number keeps on growing every year. Actually, next financial year, there were supposed to be new cities.
New cities, yes.
Until recently, when the Honorable Minister of Finance made a statement that these new cities that are meant to start next financial year cannot kick off because government does not have. And I'm sure you are aware that government decided to have several cities, but the operationalization was, made in phases.
Currently, how many cities are operational apart from Kampala?
Currently should be about 9.
Yes. Gulu also, yes.
Gulu, Arua, Soroti, Mbale, then you go to Masaka, Fort Portal, Oima, Mbarara, Jinja.
Yes, sir.
Those are cities that have been made operational.
Yes, sir.
And even after making those cities operational, there are serious challenges. Actually, as I speak right now, the cities are operational by name. Because one, there is no proper guideline to drive the functionality of the cities. Number two, there is even no approved human resource structure. So the people working in the cities are actually former employees of municipalities who are acting. And when you go to this, I've been to many of these cities with our committee. When you go to the cities, there are a lot of challenges that are going on. So it takes you back to whether these local government entities are being supported enough. But the other thing which is...
Before you go on, and I'm not cutting you short, there is something I'd like you to, it's technical, but for purpose of the public viewers to also know. Will these new cities also operate under a KCC, an act of parliament, or
no,
they are operating under local government act?
The new cities are operating under the framework of the local government act.
Not yet the city
actually, their
authority.
operation will not be different from Kampala City Council.
It will be different.
It will operate the way Kampala City Council, not Kampala City Council Authority. So they operate directly under the framework of the local government.
City councils.
Exactly.
You can take us on.
Yes. So,
ambiguity of the law.
Pardon?
That is ambiguity of the law.
Exactly. And then the other thing that is very important to talk about. If you want to see whether local government entities have the capacity to deliver, you look at how they manage their own affairs. Tomorrow we will start considering audit reports. These audits that were carried out by the Auditor General's office. The committee that I chair will start work tomorrow.
Thank you.
And when you look at the reports, you look at the findings of this audit report, it sends a very worrying message to the country. Because a lot of money is left unspent, and so these monies have to go back to Treasury. And when you ask why, it's partly because of capacity gaps. You go to local government entities where staffing level is less than 40%, and they're expected to deliver services. And so these are things that have to be dealt with. Then the other thing which is equally worrying is the trend. You see a worrying trend where local governments are not even able to generate their own local revenue. So the level of dependency keeps on growing. As I talk right now, majority of the local government entities are only able to generate just about 2 to 3% of the total budget projection. So you find a local government entity with a budget of about 35 billion, but is not able to generate on its own even 1 billion. Now that is worrying, because then local governments have to depend on the center, and the moment they depend entirely on the center, then there is a lot of control and restrictions, and they cannot take decisions on their own. And then the other thing comes in the Public Finance Management Act. Yes. This law, which I am sure the intention was good, but the implementation right now has demonstrated that local governments are even getting a lot more crippled. as I talk right now, there are several local government entities that have been running to Parliament. Actually, last year in November and December, I repeatedly raised a concern to the Minister of Local Government and Minister of Finance, where many local government entities are not even able to have council meetings. Why? Because now locally generated revenue has to go to the consolidated fund. And for you to access that money, there are a lot of bureaucratic processes that have to be followed. And so I'll give you the example of Gulu City. Currently, Gulu City is not able to have even a council meeting. Why? Because when they started the budgeting process for last financial year, their local revenue projection was about 3 billion.
3 billion.
When they submitted that to Minister of Finance, Minister of Finance only presented to Parliament about 491 million. And that is what was approved. Now, you can imagine from over 3 billion to 491, meaning Gulu City only is allowed to utilize that which was approved by Parliament, appropriated by Parliament. So, by end of first quarter, Gulu City had exhausted the 491. But as I talk right now, they have generated over 2 billion.
That was last year.
Yeah, no, this financial year. All right? So by November last year, they generated way above what the ministry presented to Parliament. All right? So as I speak right now, they have over 2 billion redundant on their account. They started pleading last year for a supplementary budget.
Redundant, unable to utilize it.
They're not able to utilize because for them to utilize, they need a supplementary budget.
Okay.
Simply because the ministry presented only 491 when their projection was 3 billion.
491.
491. That is what Minister of Finance presented to Parliament.
Serious difference.
And you are the representative of Guru Samson.
Exactly. Now, what happened?
Why was that case? Why did you not present
I'm
their
bringing
case?
that to you, sir.
So
what happened? Of course, during the appropriation process, that was done by the previous Parliament before I had come in. All right? So what I did after seeing how the city was failing to function, because a lot of the activities, collecting, garbage management, making sure the street lights are functional, there are many services that the city has to offer. Now, all these come from locally generated revenue. So my question to Minister of Finance was, how long does it take for you to have a supplementary done? And remember, the city is not asking for more money. The city is just saying, allow us to spend what we have generated. But the Public Finance Management Act requires that the city does not have the capacity to approve a supplementary budget. It has to be Parliament.
Has to be Parliament.
So the centre has taken over powers of local governments to the extent that local governments do not have the power to approve a supplementary budget, to reallocate, or even environment. All those powers have been taken away. Now, we have been struggling for the last almost 5 months for Gulu City to have its money back. But you can imagine what the ministry is saying. We cannot present only for Gulu, we need to present for all the local government entities. It has to go to cabinet, then comes back to... It's a long process, very bureaucratic. On the other side, local governments are getting suffocated. So these are things that keep on affecting the ability of local governments to effectively deliver services and take part meaningfully in enhancing development. Then the other thing that is equally key to talk about is whether we have provided the necessary environment for, you are talking about local economic development.
Local economic development,
Right.
talk to it.
You are talking about local economic development. But when you go to all the local government entities across the country, I'll give you my example. When I was chairman of Gulu District, what we did when immediately government started talking about the local economic development policy,
Yes.
we had to go through a process of domesticating it, so that as a local government, we own it. We begin to look at it not just as a government policy, because the moment you begin to look at policies and ideas from the perspective of, central government and you are that local government, then the aspect of ownership becomes a problem. So what we did was to look at how do we domesticate this? How do we make it our own, using our own environment and, our own experiences? How do we turn this and make it a lot more meaningful? And that partly contributed to how Gulu District local government moved from generating the little local revenue to just within 2 financial years, we went from about 500 million to over 1.5 billion. Just because we are able to meaningfully get involved in the process of enhancing local economies, and as a result, you are even able to get the impact on your, yes, per annum.
And what's the wage bill for Guru City?
Well,
Per annum.
for Gulu City right now, I cannot tell you, but I'm talking about Gulu District when I was chairman. Okay. For Gulu City, I need to analyze. So the moment you are able to generate a lot more money, the moment you are able to involve the population as a local government. What
about the wage bill for Guru District as a district?
As of now, I'm not sure because a number of things have come up. The coming in of the new city affected the old district because several areas got annexed to the city. Then the coming in of a Moro district. So it's getting smaller, not unlike those.
Yeah, so Honorable, as we're about to welcome Honorable Banyezachi also to give his analytical point of view, I appreciate so much for the information you are sharing with us because many Ugandans, they don't know all those details. But what is realistic to all of us, and that remains a question to everyone, is should we continue to applaud the creation of more districts as an engine for economic development? And in our policy that we have just enlightened on, it is referring the policy as a way to reduce poverty. So I'm blessed that you are here, and I thank you, and also I thank God for the ranks that you raised from leadership, from a councillor to LC5 chairman, now a member of parliament. Now to the viewers, at least you have information. You will just make one statement of explanation, whether in reality on the ground, the creation, the continuous creation and maybe funding of these local governments, have they achieved anything? Is it of anything to recognize that we have now maybe poverty reduction since the time at least you became the councillor? Do we look at anything like wealth creation down there? Do we look at like maybe household income? And maybe in the process you tell us what we should do best. You have just 1 or 2 minutes to give us a brief, and then we'll come here again.
You see, Doctor, saying yes or no would not be the best.
I understand.
Because there are so many factors that we have to consider. But generally, I would say the idea of creating new local government entities is not a bad idea. Okay? But I think there are things that have to be considered in the process of taking the decision to create. The creation should not just be driven by the political urge, or should not be based on pressure.
So the idea is good, but the method is wrong.
The idea is good. The idea is good, but
the method.
The method, but also the level of preparation. Because when you create a new local government entity, how much are you prepared to support that entity so it can deliver to the expectation of the citizens? That is key. You create a new local government entity or a district or a city, but you do not have the manpower to drive it. You do not have the resources to drive it. There are challenges that have to deal with. I am not against the creation of new districts or local government units, but I think we need to do it carefully, and we should also reflect deeply whether those we have created have actually delivered.
So, Honorable, what I'm now realizing, the good thing we still have some minutes, around 30 minutes to go, 40, we are going to have a serious debate, which is a paradox and with controversies, but which are not of our own making, but circumstances. We are saying there is, for us in our culture, one said that if I consume fire. If I consume fire, but it is sweet, then I feel to consume it. Then if I spit fire. This gentleman knows that language. That I eat something good. Mm-hmm. I then again, if I'm spit it out, then I will spit
fire. Swallow, sweetness, spit fire.
So finally,
so is swallowing sweetness, spitting fire.
So we are saying it is good, and it is good for us members. The viewers.
You know, Doctor. Sorry for this interruption, but
we will come on after your statement.
No problem.
Yes.
I am trying to be as honest as possible.
I understand. I agree.
No, Mapinduzi is a product of that sweetness swallowing.
Really?
Had not that sweetness swallowing come, maybe those divisions and parliamentary seats wouldn't have been there. But inside his heart, he knows that we have fragmented this.
He also supported the creation of Rwanda district.
I know it is bad. I know it is bad.
Let's welcome him, and he gives us his point of view.
This local government so much.
Yes, sir.
And of course, you can see, hearing my brother, Honorable Mapinduzi, you can hear it is about expenditure without
the readiness, all that.
Yeah, it's about expenditure capacity without creating wealth creation mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So we have created now the appetite is for spending appetite.
Mm-hmm.
Wealth creation, economic local development, which we are discussing today,
yes, sir,
is not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, when this policy that we are discussing now is a policy that was passed in 2014, local economic development policy.
Mm-hmm.
And this policy of local economic development policy was meant and had a purpose to achieve job creation, economic growth for rural development, industrialization, agro-industrialization for these rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a turnaround for this local development, the local district or local regions.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, it was trying to promote regional development through local economic initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
And these local economic initiatives were to be created through partnership with public-private partnership. That was as the main vehicle, whereby the private sector would partner with the public sector, with the local governments to develop those local areas, create industries, create agro-industrialization, create job creation entities, so that what Honorable Mapinduzi was talking about, you create those sectors whereby they can generate revenue for the districts. So what has, at the end of the day, the policy, nobody have focused on this policy as such. Because they have not focused on this policy as such, that's why you have district, but they don't have local revenue. You are having you are having cities. You are having a city. You are having a city Guru. You have city like our Kisoro. You have another our Kabale. You have our Poto. You have Jinja. You have Mbale. So many cities. Mm-hmm. But have you industrialized those cities? Is there deliberate policy? If my member of parliament, I would have liked the member of parliament to talk, because there is a government plan which has been there in paper to create about 22 industrial areas within the country.
22.
It is these industrial zones that where this local government will get revenue, because you are creating employment. That will be you are doing a catalyst into the development of those rural areas. Mm-hmm. But the current debate that we have, unfortunately, even in our policy makers, in the top policy organs, which could be, you call it cabinet, call it the parliament, the talk is, give us, we consume. Give us, we consume. He's just come back from Guru to send off my great friend. May his soul rest in peace. You get it? But the debate around that send-off was, give us money, we consume. Let us spend as much as possible. Not to say what is the health infrastructure in this area that our great man from Guru, from northern region, this state of health care, where, how, why, you get? So had we been planning not having an appetite for consumption, but we have appetite for investment, this would be a different story. There would be local revenue.
Appetite for consumption.
This, the appetite for consumption,
for investment.
Of the appetite for consumption of public finance is far, far, far higher than the strategic plan for creation of wealth. So we are into the appetite of creating district, creating cities, creating sub-counties, creating county councils, which will be a conduit of expenditure that he's talking about. But we are not having the appetite of creating industries, promoting agriculture, exploiting our minerals in Karamoja, in Kigezi, in wherever it is, investing in tourism, investing in infrastructure, investing in our rural roads so that there is rural development, creating a railway, revamp the railway that had at one time was reaching to Pakwach, creating a railway that will go to Karamoja to bring those minerals, have a railway that will reach Kabale, Rwanda, and bring that iron ore. Leave alone the national development plan. Are you unpacking that national development plan? Are you implementing the plan that you have put in place? Are you implementing this local economic development policy 2014? Now it is 8 years down the road. It is now obsolete. It is obsolete now. Have you unpacked the strategic plans that each district is supposed to be having? No, you don't.
Have a question.
So there should be a deliberate move. There should be a deliberate move in this country for our government to move and we go to these local areas.
I have a question for you.
There was, you are going to ask me, I work with the Operation Wealth Creation. We attempted to do this because we unpacked this policy, and that's why we came up with agro-industrialization, local economic development, aggregate. And that is where we began with a model. We went to Rwenzori region. In so doing, we moved money from the center to Rwenzori region to do tourism. There is an industrial area being now under preparation, finance coffee, finance cocoa, finance all that kind of things. Because you have cocoa coming from Bundibujo, you have coffee coming from Tora region, you have tea, you have these other crops. You have an opportunity of opening like Chibare and other areas for cocoa, which is the third most important crop in this country that streams in about 120 billion as a revenue. So all these kind of things, if we were to look at that, and no sooner had we come, and we are now moving, actually the next move was going to move to Kigezi. No sooner have we come now, the consistency of implementation of our policies and sustainability of implementing our policies is also, it undermines the efforts being done. No sooner have you done this now, you say, put that one on their side, parish development model. This is a bigger picture. It's a bigger picture. It's talking to industrialization, tap into the East African market, support Bubu, build Uganda, buy Uganda. It taps into the world market. You're having cocoa being lifted and to the European market. You're having coffee going to America, going to Asia, going to everywhere. You are having tea. You are promoting tea to be competitive. You are creating a competitive environment. But the moment you leave this one, which is a bigger picture, and now you come on this smaller picture to entrench subsistence economy again, you are finished.
Kind of allow me to ask you this
so
question.
Now on this issue, I can tell you,
yes,
as a country, the performance of the local economic development policy If you ask me to rate, I can rate it maybe even 10%. I'm being generous.
You had something to say, Honorable Mapenduzi.
You see, I like the way it's quite. I don't want to say motivating, but I have enjoyed hearing his opinion, and I wish, especially those in the executive.
Yes.
I wish they would see the same way is looking at all this, because the biggest problem we have in this country is that we are too used to being comfortable in our very traditional way. And so, in trying to avoid people from being very critical, we want to, create environment that diverts their attention. The other problem that we have in this country is where you come with an idea, a very brilliant idea, that everyone would think it's likely to turn around things. Before you are even there, there is something completely new coming up.
Absolutely.
Completely.
As we think about this.
So you like, sometimes I ask, sometimes I'm tempted to ask myself who has bewitched this country. Because for you to succeed, there are three key things to succeed. One is knowledge. Do we have that in this country? Yes, we do.
Knowledge.
We do. Number two, resources. Do we have that in this country? We do.
Yeah, we do.
Number three, the goodwill to drive the knowledge and the resources to reach there. That's where we have a problem.
Thank you, Honorable Mapenduzi. Thank you, Honorable Banyenzachi. For this session, we'll go back just after the break. We'll have the second session. I'll be having some questions to bring on table, and it looks to be there is somewhere dilemma. Who is the root cause of the problem? Because I'm seeing here senior citizens, responsible Ugandans, enlightening us on how best things should go. But yet it looks to be there is something that is standing on our way. We will be able to overcome. Please, let's not just lose hope, but we will reach where we are going. Thank you so much. Let's go for the break and see you in the next session.